We cannot live under such a threat and have our communities in such close proximity to what basically is another iteration or version of ISIS. So in order to rid our civilians of that threat, we have to conduct some unprecedented strikes and military activity against Hamas and fundamentally change the situation.
Welcome to Israel Under Fire. I'm Erick Stakelbeck. This is a special series we are doing here on TBN as Israel's war with Hamas continues. Day 19 today, Wednesday, October 25th. And folks, here is the state of play right now. Over 1,400 Israelis, mostly civilians, slaughtered by Hamas in that October 7th massacre. Still over 200 hostages in Hamas's clutches, in the bowels and the tunnels beneath Gaza, and Israel is striking back and striking back hard in preparation for what looks like a coming ground invasion. Israel has eliminated several top Hamas military commanders, but on the flip side, Hamas continues to fire rockets into Israel, reaching as far as Eilat and Haifa. These are long-range rockets. Secondly, leaders from Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hezbollah met today in Beirut, plotting their path forward, and their masters in Tehran, the Iranian regime, are engineering attacks against U.S. forces in the region as well. We've seen a growing number of attacks against U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq. A lot going on to discuss with our first guest tonight, the international spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces, Jonathan Conricus, joins us from Israel. Jonathan, welcome. It is always great to see you, my friend. I wish it was under better circumstances, of course. But if you can, give us an overview of how Israel's campaign against Hamas is going right now. It seems that Hamas has been severely weakened.
Hi, Eric. Shalom from Tel Aviv. As always, good to see you. And thank you for having me on your show. Well, weekend or not, sadly, rockets are still being fired at Israel. And every few hours, millions of Israelis have to seek shelter. Hamas still has significant capabilities inside the Gaza Strip. They have that because they hide underground. And all of their combat infrastructure is hidden underneath the civilians in a very elaborate network of tunnels that Hamas has been building for many, many years, which is really the backbone of all of their military capabilities. We are striking Hamas, and we have been striking Hamas quite severely over the last, let's say, 2 weeks, with about between 200 to 400 military targets struck every day and night. Our priorities are senior commanders and anybody who participated in the planning or execution of the atrocities of October 7th. And so far, we have gotten our hands, or more likely our bombs, on quite a lot of them. But the list is long, and we're generating new intelligence as time goes by in order to get to each and every one of them. The pictures on the screen are from one of the attempts by Hamas to infiltrate using naval commandos. They've done so several times over these days, and we've been able to successfully thwart all of those attacks. And we are focusing, yes, the Air Force is the spear, or the tip of the spear of our effort, delivering precise munitions against military targets all across the Gaza Strip.
Yeah. Ultimately, the goal stated, Jonathan, by Israel's political and military leadership is to decisively crush Hamas once and for all. Hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists have been called up. Can you ultimately crush Hamas without a ground campaign as you look ahead?
Yeah, first and foremost, we have to understand that I think we have crossed a watershed moment here where we understand that we cannot allow ourselves as a nation, a country, a people, and as a military to go back to the situation before 6:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, October the 7th. We simply cannot. And the situation has to change fundamentally. We cannot live under such a threat and have our communities in such close proximity to what basically is another iteration or version of ISIS. So in order to rid our civilians of that threat, we have to conduct some unprecedented strikes and military activity against Hamas and fundamentally change the situation. Now, yes, part of that will be a ground maneuver. I think it is clear today, and it's been said multiple times by the political echelon as well as by the senior military echelon, we will maneuver. Why? Because in order to flush out all of those terrorists that are hiding underground under the civilians, we need to have boots on the ground, and we need to apply technologies and tactics that are not accessible from the air. That will be difficult. It will take time. It'll be a costly and high-intensity maneuver. At the end of it, and this is the really important thing, Hamas will be eradicated, and we will return stability and peace to the area. And I personally am yearning for the moment that I will hear the sound of children playing in their backyard in the communities around Gaza. That's what I'm hoping for, and that's the ultimate aim. Not just the military defeat of Hamas, but the return of our civilians to their homes, to their communities, and a sense of safety for these people who were butchered and raped and mutilated inside their communities, and of course, a return of our 222 confirmed hostages.
Yeah, the elimination of Hamas, absolutely necessary, Jonathan, as you said. And those communities in southern Israel are so beautiful surrounding Gaza. But I want to ask you about the hostages, but first also the potential of a new front in Lebanon. We see Iran's most lethal proxy, Hezbollah, in southern Lebanon, continuing to fire anti-tank missiles. There have been several engagements with the IDF along the Lebanon border. How concerned are you that Hezbollah is going to get more involved as this war continues?
Yeah, Hezbollah is pushing the envelope quite hard and playing a very dangerous game of brinkmanship here. Those who will pay the price will be the Lebanese and the Lebanese state. And the question here that should be asked is Lebanon really willing to jeopardize what is left of Lebanese prosperity and sovereignty for the sake of a bunch of terrorists in Gaza? The obvious answer is no. That's what the Lebanese should be answering themselves. But what we've seen over the last days with significant intensivity is continued attacks by Hezbollah using anti-tank missiles, artillery, UAVs, mortars, infiltration attempts, and many other things that they have been doing across the border, not just in one location in the east, in Mount Dov. And as you say very correctly, we're dealing with the biggest, most lethal, and most well-equipped Iranian proxy around us. They have state-level capabilities, both in terms of quantity and quality of weapons. And we know that they have very little regard for Lebanese interests and have regard for Iranian interests. So far, we've been able to defend ourselves, and we are deployed in the north in significant strength, responding to attacks. We are extracting a price of Hezbollah, and more than 40 Hezbollah combatants have been killed. Their numbers, not ours, and that is significant. Unfortunately, we have had casualties as well. But bigger picture here, this definitely is a very important part of what's going on. Let's hope that the American presence in the area and the Israeli ability to defend ourselves will be deterrent enough for Lebanon to make the right choice for itself and the region.
Jonathan, we see in recent days U.S. forces in the region as well coming under attack in Syria and Iraq by Iranian-backed militias. Just so everyone at home understands that Hamas and Hezbollah aren't independent actors, could you talk more about how the Iranian regime is really the source of most of the chaos in the region right now and essentially the head of the snake when it comes to terror throughout the Middle East and beyond?
Yes, not only Israelis, have called Iran the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. They're not so good at fighting themselves. They don't have a lot of combat experience themselves, the Iranians, but when it comes to using others in order to do their dirty fighting for them, the Iranians, unfortunately, are very good. And they're very happy to expand and use Yemenites, Lebanese, Iraqis, Gazans, other Palestinians in order to attack American troops and, of course, in order to attack Israelis. There's a very clear connecting line here between all of the ammunition, weapons, explosives, and money that has been provided to Hamas, and all of the capabilities that Hezbollah has, and whatever capabilities the Houthis in Yemen and many organizations in Iraq have. The common denominator is Iran. All of the money comes from Iran. All of the weapons come from Iran. The guidance comes from Iran. The directives and the will and the political force behind it is Iran. They are an evil force that spreads instability, violence, wherever their troops go, wherever the Quds force, which is their expeditionary force for exporting terror, wherever they go, instability, mayhem, and violence follow. They're a force for the worse in the world. Unfortunately, they have money, unfrozen funds that they are using now in order to fund this war and perhaps preparing for the next one. And I think that anybody in the world, especially freedom-loving Western countries, should address Iran for what it is: a bad regime doing bad things around the world and up to nothing good when it comes to global peace and local stability. And I think that they are walking into a very dangerous situation, the Iranians are.
Yeah, we're hoping that October 7th was a wake-up call as to Iran's nefarious intentions for people here in the West. They should have known already, but the hostages, Jonathan, you mentioned a minute ago, over 200 still in Hamas's clutches in Gaza, some U.S. citizens as well. How does that complicate things, perhaps, for the IDF as you plan the ground offensive to crush Hamas decisively? What is the latest on the hostage situation in Gaza and how you're approaching that?
Yeah, you're right, Eric, about the complexity. This is an unprecedented situation. Never before has Israel faced such a complex situation where so many of our people are held by a ruthless terror organization. It is a military and diplomatic intelligence challenge. We will overcome it, and we are allocating all of our resources. And really, it's top priority, obviously top priority, in order to get our people home. Let's put it like this. We are going to dismantle Hamas and make sure that they never again have the military ability to strike or to threaten Israeli civilians. And we are going to get our people home. For obvious reasons, I cannot elaborate more about the tension between these two parts of our mission statement, but it will happen. And I can say that, we in the IDF, our hearts go out to the families who know that their loved ones are being held hostage by Hamas. I want people around the world to understand what a cynical game Hamas is playing, trying to, according to their words, they do humanitarian releases, right? They've released 4 of the hostages, all of them women, and they've even been brazen enough to include the word humanitarian in their press release. This is all psyops, it's all staged, and even what we're seeing on the screen now, the last elderly lady released from captivity, her husband is still being held captive by Hamas. So, of course, that lady has no choice but to play along in Hamas charade and make it look as if she was treated fairly or humanely. Anything but. The monstrosities of October 7th are so clear, and the blood of the victims is so strong that no matter how much Hamas will try to use their propaganda machine and how much it will be parroted around the world, it is clear for anybody in the world to understand that Hamas is a terrorist organization of the most evil, brutal, and horrible kind in the world.
Jonathan, thank you for that moral clarity as always, my friend. And last question, you are very busy. We are truly appreciative for you taking the time with us. Last question, and for our viewers here on TBN who are praying for Israel, praying for the IDF night and day, what is the morale right now? Look, we have hundreds of thousands of reservists who've been called up. The IDF obviously on high alert, on war footing. The nation is so united right now. Tell us a bit about the morale among the Israel Defense Forces right now, the readiness of the soldiers who are ready to go in and do battle and defend the world's one and only Jewish state?
Yes, you and your viewers know a thing or two about the importance of spirit. And I think that so many now in Israel are coming together, setting silly and insignificant political differences aside and focusing on what needs to be done. And I'll tell you that we've had more than 150% reporting for duty rate. So we called in a certain amount of people. More than half of those who came weren't needed. So many people more decided to report for duty even though they weren't called. That's how strong the spirit is. And if you walk around the soldiers and speak with the commanders, they are ready, they are focused. I think that what you're going to see is a very focused and committed military that has a burning heart and wants to defeat Hamas militarily, but will do so in a professional and military way. We are not going to become our enemies. Yes, we are enraged and we are furious at the atrocities that our enemies did, the way that they butchered civilians, mutilated corpses, raped women, took babies hostage, all of these horrible things that I'm sure that your viewers have seen. We are not going to become our enemies. We are going to take the fight to them and we are going to kill the terrorists. The civilian population isn't our enemy, and we are not going to strike them on purpose. We have called them to be out of their way. But I think that you will see in the coming days, when our days, or even more than that, when our maneuver will start, you will see an iron fist of the IDF moving in and taking the battle to these cowards that are now hiding underneath their own civilian population, and once and for all, ridding the Gaza Strip of this cancer that has been festering there for too long, Hamas, which will be excellent for Israel. And I'll tell you that it will also be good for Gaza.